On the eve of Thanksgiving in 2013, the Disney alignment was receiving a complaint within their parks. It was reported that a bipedal canine was terrorizing the animals in Animal Kingdom. A group of the company's Astro Soul soldiers, including the co-owner, attacked the beast. But right before it was slain, the co-owner received a premonition of a figure in the jackal's place, before fading away. None of the other troops saw the figure, leading the owner to doubt what she had just saw. But unbeknownst to her, this lingering curse would emerge once more 3 years later. This is Blood of Sephzero, a storyline from U.N.I.T.S. We have now reached the final storyline of the U.N.I.T.S family, an event that occurs in November of 2016. I'm AJ, and as the title suggests, this storyline will utilize the characters and ideas that are found present by the deviant artist Sephzero. In fact, this storyline is the first canonical appearance of the organization that would be found present in future storylines. And as the cold open suggests, this storyline follows up from an event that occurred in the epilogue to Digital Defenders, in a way tying the first U.N.I.T.S storyline to its last, featuring one Miss Lilithmon, who again is Gatomon from Adventure that climbed up the ranks of becoming the co-owner of the Disney alignment for Astro Souls. I always found it interesting that Gatomon, a character I love, is involved in almost every U.N.I.T.S storyline, not because of my own bias, but rather because of the position she had took in life. In Digital Defenders, we saw her transition from just another employee to being the Astro co-owner of an entire alignment. In Mecha Geisha, she was somewhat of a second lead, defeating the Nami and Robin alternates. In Prophecy, she did nothing. In Kingdom in the Sky, she terminated the Spikes project. In Pierce the Heavens, she was the antagonist. In Stand Up, she had her own little adventure. And now finally, she gets to be the main star of a U.N.I.T.S storyline. I don't really have much to discuss at the moment, so let's get into it. November 20th, 2016. The Disney Civil War was at an all-time high, and Miss Lilith thought less and less of that faithful knight 3 years ago. But on that particular night, she was informed that 2 visitors wanted to speak to her before heading home. The 2 being a high school teacher named Ryder Collins, and one of the students from that school, Ethan Grissom. She asked the co-owner if she had seen anything strange 3 years ago, to which Ryder explains that the mysterious woman was a part of something much larger. The woman was known as Jackie Valentine, and she, amongst others, was in an organization. This autonomous organization, named after said deviant artist, consisted of individuals with unique but common traits. They were formed due to Sephzero's reflection interacting with several Astro Souls in Shareverse who all shared a unique type of blood. Since then, they have been eager to initiate future members and partake in seasonal events, such as the summer season, Halloween, and Christmas. However, there was one oddity to being a member. Each member had their own curse. While it cannot be transferred, there is a loophole. If a member of the Sephzero organization is slain in an environment that holds a surplus of energy, i.e. where they are targeted by a certain amount of people, the curse would be transferred to their killer. For the case of Lilithmon, when she killed Jackie, she got her curse. However, she never turned into a werejackal at night. The 2 possible theories were that Jackie's curse was incompatible with Digimon data, or the Digi-Crystal nullified the curse. Either way, there was a reason why Ryder and Ethan were at Orlando that night. Aside from explaining who Jackie was, it turns out the Sephzero organization had been looking for Jackie for 3 years after she went missing. Apparently, whenever there was a full moon, Jackie loses control of her werejackal form, hence why she was at Disney in 2013. As for why didn't Jackie get revived after all this time, not only did Lilithmon take her curse, but half of her soul as well, meaning Jackie could not leave the afterlife until after her soul is restored. And according to the organization, the only way that was possible was by killing Jackie's killer as a form of sacrifice. Ryder and Ethan opposed this idea when they heard about it and tried to warn the co-owner before it was too late. though Ryder was disappointed that one other student she requested to visit didn't arrive. But she told them they should arrange another meeting the next night to gather more intel before the big assassination attempt. November 21st, 2016. Ryder did bring Ethan with her once more, although this time they came with a third person, yet another high school student from the same school, Aaron Ryans, who seemed disinterested in the whole conversation. Ryder recalls that the organization was going to use a summoner to restore Jackie, but in the process could destroy Lilithmon's soul. And yes, Digimon do have souls. Have you seen Wizardmon? So the group agreed to set up a raid at the organization's base, one that was located in Syracuse. Now remember how I said each member had their own unique transformations? Lilithmon wanted to see those forms in action. The next night, November 22nd, was a usual night for the original Disney side, as they were maintaining their posts in the Astro Museum, that being the former members of Walton Crazy Guy Day. But as the sun started to set, creatures of the night emerged. A burning bright blue entity, a giant lizard, and two very strong redheads. They claimed to be a part of the organization and were looking for the group's co-owner. But right on cue, she arrived and brought her acquaintances transformed powers. Ryder's ability was that she could change into a young Scottish girl named Rolanda, Ethan's was being a tall, competent woman named Elizabeth, and Aaron being a tall, competent woman named Pearl, her very own creation from her books. The three of which having their own conscience and personalities compared to their hosts. Hell, Pearl doesn't even know that she's a fictional creation made by Aaron. But almost immediately, the plan backfired, as Rolanda looked into the moon and transformed back into Ryder. Pearl wasn't able to pick up a weapon and fight, and while Elizabeth and Ryder put up a valiant effort, they were easily overwhelmed. After this beatdown, the intruders kidnapped Doll, the former leader of Walton Crazy Guy Day. One of the girls, Hannah, told the recently beaten Digimon that she had 24 hours to rescue Doll. Otherwise, they would use her half of Lady Maria's soul for the resurrection of Jackie Valentine. And with a tight deadline, Lilithmon had a couple of questions for her new assailants. The first thing she did was to ask the girls exactly what kind of threats they would have to face, and any more additional details of their transformations. So, with the Sephzero organization, the group is filled to the brim with a multitude of monsters, savage beasts, mad scientists, and sorcerers of the supernatural kind. So where does Pearl, Rolanda, and Elizabeth fit in this hierarchy? Right at the bottom. These forms are quite possibly the most tame and normal transformations in the group. No superpowers or anything, aside from Pearl and her random ability of Golden Luck. Lilithmon, knowing that the odds were heavily stacked against her, she decided the best possible scenario was to work with the abilities that the girls were most comfortable with. While Ryder and Rolanda do know how to box, Rolanda's personal skills were being fast and agile, as well as having a good grip. Pearl was not a woman of combat, however, whatever Aaron does right in her books, it allows Pearl to use those skills in the real world. But Aaron hated the idea of using direct violence for Pearl, so she wrote that Pearl's body was as tough as steel. That way, she could indirectly fight. And as for Elizabeth, she was relatively easy to decode. She learned and self-taught a bunch of combat skills and techniques based on the anime, and even hentai, that Ethan watched. The only difficulty was that Ronaldo turns back into Ryder whenever she is exposed to moonlight. Their solution was to avoid looking at the moon at all cost, as well as starting their rescue mission prior to dusk to get a head start. And as for Lilithmon, considering she would be in a territory where her curse would overreact, she decided to be more determined and strategic in the next 24 hours. In order to be further safe, she grabbed her explosive blaster, a present given to her by Mickey during the Civil War, alongside her Demon Lord sword. Almost immediately, the three trained with their preferred methods during the day. But as 5 p.m. came, the traders packed up their things and began to drive to Syracuse. However, there was one more person who wanted to get back at the organization. Some of the victims of the museum attack came from the Mega Man family, and this family group always looks out for one another. If you mess with one of them, another one would get their revenge. As such, one of the members of the family, Ale, felt that she should avenge her family members after this beatdown. She asked Miss Lilith if she could indirectly help out, going on her own solo mission, rescuing Doll in the background while the others were on the forefront. With Biometal X and a sniper rifle in hand, she went off on her own. And with that, the raid began. Lilithmon wanted to make sure to park near a set of woods near the base, in order to prevent moonlight exposure for Rolanda, but the organization had already tracked her car the night before, as the members began to attack the traders in the woods. An orc lady named Dryka the Blood Axe, a Pegasus-like creature named Unimara, and a black horse named, I'm not kidding, the Headless Horseman's Horse. The traders fought the three, using their unique but normal traits to somehow turn the fight in their favor, and with that stroke of luck, the three attackers were killed. For Rolanda and Pearl, they were mortified with the fact that they would have to kill a bunch of people that they once called friends. For Elizabeth, she didn't care, it was part of the mission. But Lilithmon told them that they were traitors the moment the three of them left the organization, and they shouldn't feel bad because they were astral souls that would be revived eventually. What's very interesting was that the organization sent 3 members at a time, as the traitors moved closer to the base, perhaps as a way to stall the trio until moonlight fell, making them powerless. Regardless, the group trekked on, with Miss Lilith's more instinctive skills coaching the girls with the best possible methods for each fight. It turns out she had been utilizing the Eye of Truth skill that was given to her by the curse, only activating it recently for this storyline. It allowed her to see through any tricks the organization threw at the group and predict plans on the fly. So basically she became Madam Web. Too soon? It should be noted that even though their energy was high, because all 4 girls had a Sephzero curse, none of the opponent's curses would be passed down to them whenever they were killed off by the traitors. Think of it as a 1 curse per person type rule. On the outskirts, Ale was on her way to the organization on her motorbike, but that's when she was stopped by one of the attackers the night prior, a green kaiju named Warbeast, who did the usual kaiju tricks of spitting out fire. But Ale came prepared. Using Model X to give her that boost in combat, she knocked the beast unconscious, regressing it back to her human state. I sure hope this doesn't become an obstacle later on. Ale parked closer to the base as she began her stealth rescue mission. She already took down one of her targets, 3 more to go. I want to make it clear that some of these members aren't entirely bad people. Take Isa Powers for example, alias Super Sojo Girl, a heroine that fights for justice. However, she hated the fact that Gatomon had to use her dark megaform when running the Disney alignment, so she took offense to that, as well as the traitors since her, Rolanda, and Aaron were good friends with one another. Another person that Lilithmon had beef with was with the vixen Black Fox, who was a self-titled Demon Lord. But for Lilithmon, an actual Demon Lord, she immediately put Fox in her place. But during these fights in the woods, the girls noticed that the woods themselves were moving. Almost right on cue, our Ranger Yellow made her appearance alongside the 2 other organization members for that wave. Now Lilithmon not only had to telegraph the actions of the members, but for the Rangers as well. Eventually, after taking them out, she understood how the organization would resurrect Jackie. They were going to use Rita's uppermint to revive Jackie, in exchange for killing either Miss Lilith or Doll. Now, how is Rita still evil, and why does she still have her uppermint alongside her Rangers? Well, more on that later. But first, some of Ale's actions. She was able to corner off one of the members from the attack last night inside the base, that being one of the strong redheads, Melissa Winston. Supposedly, she said she was strong as Samus in her base form, as a means to intimidate the young intruder. But even still, Ale was just barely able to knock her unconscious using her rifle and her Model X abilities. Moving back to the traitors, they too had to fight one more wave of members, but also our Ranger Red tagging alongside of them, as a last-minute hold to prevent the group getting into the base with her Upperman. Likewise, they were defeated, but right before entering the building, they noticed one of the members unconscious, Vixia Vixen, whose original form was one of the shy girls of the group, Nellie Patrick. Lilithmon determined that she would not be a threat to them, as she ordered the girls to spare her. But that being said, it was time for the final stretch of the storyline as the moon began to rise in the night sky. The next waves inside the building were even more challenging, what with the cramped space, but also the appearance of some of the more stronger members of the organization. Add that with the remaining 3 Rangers, and the odds for the traitors were stacked against them. But even without Miss Lilith's supervision, they held up on their own and finished their opponents off, again using Pearl's luck. There were 2 groups that did feature some of the more heavy-hitting members. One was the Big Bad Wolf, no relation to anybody with that name in the Disney alignment. Or maybe there is. And Fuse, the former villain of Prophecy, but currently the Pink R Ranger, introduced his servant, Chris Fang. And if you saw Prophecy, you would know that these 2 wolf dudes showed up in that storyline's finale and epilogue. It's revealed that the 2 wolves were good friends and have been trading stories and hints on Jackie's whereabouts from 2013 to 2016, all leading up to this day, but much like before, they were defeated. However, for one instance, in the fight against Helen Hyde and Gloria Hyde, with Ranger Black tagging along, Gloria told Pearl that it was ironic that she would be switching sides, not for this storyline, but for their previous endeavors in another U.N.I.T.S storyline. But for Pearl, she had no idea what Gloria was talking about as she decommissioned her. On the other side of the building, Ale made her way to Doll's prison cell, only to find her beaten and unconscious, to which she was greeted by yet another one of her targets, the blue alien named Supernova, but this time she was able to kill one of her targets. Ale then blasted an escape route for Doll and told her to leave, but since she had one more fight to face, she remained in the building. Like I said before, the organization is autonomous, meaning that there isn't really a leader. However, there are a handful of members that could take that mantle, and the following 3 could be well considered the figureheads of the organization. While Helen is the main character of the organization, she has no prominent direct power. As for these 3, it was another story. Cheryl Hyde, August Ingrid, and Starla the Sensational. While for August, Jackie was more of the prominent jackal out of the 2, she was more serving as a stand-in. With Cheryl's science and Starla's magic, the 2 were a powerful threat. But as the traitors fought, they noticed one thing. Lilithmon was absent. While the numbers of the organization dwindled, Ale was stopped by her final target. Ann Carter was not only the latest member of the organization, but was the only member who had 3 forms, with Hannah being the strongest, and had a power level equal to Samus's base form. But after her 3 intense fights, Ale was in no shape to try and stand toe-to-toe with that feat. But that's when she got help. Miss Lilith too had some unfinished business with Hannah and fought her one-on-one. Ale, still in a weakened state, helped out from afar as well, and together, both of them killed Hannah. But back to the girls, the trio teamed up to defeat the weakest of the 3 threats, that being August, and for Starla and Cheryl, they roped them into creating a concoction spell that warped their bodies into an endless void. All that was left was to defeat Rita and stop the ritual. The 5 girls made their way to the central auditorium, where Rita was planning the final pieces to the ritual. Now for some clarification, at the end of Stand Up, when the Ranger Flame was balanced, there was no need for anyone to have an uppermost system or the fact that Rita and Zed would still be evil. But the events of the finale kinda caused a loophole. Because there were female villainesses pillars for each era already being held by the Restorers, it didn't mean Rita was automatically redeemed and good again. And because of that, her and Zed used their magic to create copies of their uppermosts for themselves and the Rita Rangers. Now where's Zed in this storyline? He was doing his own stuff, which could tie into how he's evil again in Dino Fury many years later. Now how did the Sephzero organization came into contact with Rita? Well, when she died, Rita tried a couple of her own magic spells while in the afterlife, and some of these spells came into contact with half of Jackie's soul. The two made a promise to let the organization know about Jackie's whereabouts when Rita was revived. And because Rita was a good person for nearly 50 years, her sentence in the afterlife was relatively short. And why did they use Doll as a second option for the sacrifice? Remember how I said that the Ranger organization knows everything about all Astral Souls from every alignment? Well, that could also be said for some of their ex-villains too, with Rita being one of them. So she was already aware that Doll was under Disney custody and that she was carrying half of Lady Maria's soul, making her a good candidate. But now, there was no need for Doll since Lilithmon was front and center of the auditorium. With so much blood being spilled throughout the night, Rita used her faux uppermint to resurrect every member of the organization, including Starla and Cheryl and her Rangers, to all meet up in the auditorium for a huge brawl. Plus, Margaret and Warbeast came too and returned to the base to join the others. With the five surrounded, the traitors, including Ale, engaged in a fight for their lives, with Ale making sure to pick off different foes in order for her to not have a curse be passed down to her. And because of Rita's magic, everyone came back with half of their power level, making the fight more believable for the traitors to win. But even still, luck would eventually run out. During the crossfire, Pearl shielded the others from an atomic blast from Warbeast that she could only hold out for so long before disintegrating. This enraged Lilithmon as she slashed through even more threats blindly. At one point, the base's roof caved in, making it more difficult for Rolanda to fight without switching back to Ryder. But in the end, Lilithmon found a solution. With the blood on her body, she rushed to Rita and forced her to use her magic to revive Pearl, now returning as Aaron. Now having a more weaker body for reviving somebody who died mere seconds ago, Rita was easily killed, preventing more resurrections to happen for the organization. In just a matter of minutes, the remaining members were killed, leaving a fire in the auditorium's place. Just when it seemed that everyone could go home, Lilithmon's body began to hurt, causing an arm to burst out of her stomach. Apparently, when Rita revived everyone, the amount of blood from the second wave of the organization was just enough blood to resurrect Jacqueline Valentine as a failsafe if the traitors did get this far. Apparently, there was no need for Lilithmon's soul to be destroyed when the organization and Rita planned this out all along. While Miss Lilith was recovering from her wounds, she ordered the four to leave the building, as this fight was hers, knowing that only one would come out of this alive. Because half of Jackie's soul was bounded to a Digimon for so long, her claws were now able to pierce through digital data. Not only that, but Lilithmon didn't have any of Jackie's skills anymore, meaning that the fight was 100% fair. As the moon illuminated the burning building, the two began their rematch. Both monsters traded blows, with so much blood being traded and splattered. Even still, the girls could easily heal these smaller cuts without worry. But as their bodies grew tired, Miss Lilith, after getting stabbed, slashed, and bit in more places than any man could realistically survive, found a blind spot to Jackie's attacks and exploited it. with only one round of her explosives left, she used it on the staggered Jackal. But once more, right before pulling the trigger, she noticed Jackie's normal form staring back, this time giving an honest smile, bested by her rival as her soul returned to the afterlife, this time fully intact. With the building still burning, Lilith Mon made her way back to the car where everyone was waiting, Doll included. There was only one thing left on her mind from the experiences that she had on that night. She needed a vacation. While the storyline had ended, it almost immediately led into the group reorganizing. Because of their afterlife sentences being relatively short, some having a day, the revived group strategized their next plans, a plan that would lead into the endgame of a 5-year legacy. But that would be for next time. So that was Blood of Sephzero, the last leg of U.N.I.T.S. Again, I want to give another shout out to the original creator that inspired me with this storyline. And if you like his content, please consider looking at his DeviantArt page. But like I said, the U.N.I.T.S finale will be next. So if you liked this story, please give the video a like, and stay subscribed for whenever the finale comes out. Until then, I'm AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.